Hooday, Bengal fans. He is Eric. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. As you guys can see, Mon is not with us today live. However, he will be in the chat, chatting it up. He is once again out protecting our community. So thank you, Mon, for your service and everything you do. He is working at the fire department tonight, but he is definitely going to be in the chat. Want to thank all of you guys for joining us live. We know the season is technically over. We're rolling into the off season now, but we have a lot to talk about and a really good show. I'm very excited about what we're going to be talking about tonight. Before we do, though, Eric, how has your week been? Just got back from Cincinnati. How was the trip?
Man, it's a whirlwind. The last one of the season. It takes a lot out of you driving 14, 15 hours with three kids in the car all the way up to Cincinnati and back from Cincinnati. But safe to say our love affair with the Cincinnati area is just growing. My kids got to chase some snow and see some snow falling and play in it. And that was just fantastic. We couldn't ask for a better timing. We had to go where the snow was because it wasn't snowing in Cincinnati, so we drove up north and we found it. And what a weekend! It was a very cold game. I tried to join from the stadium again. It just didn't really work out, but cold game, worth it. Not one of the super Joe Burrow games that we all go and get excited about. But I'll tell you what, hats off to all these Cincinnati fans. Yes, there were Browns fans there, but I don't think there was more Browns fans than there were Steelers fans or more Browns fans than there were Texans fans in those other games. Cincinnati showed up and supported their team, and we had fun. We're not used to watching meaningless games. I did put a tweet out there. Some say it's a meaningless game, and I say this is where the meaning is defined. And I really think that there is no truer statement. Their fans were there. We showed our support, our love for our Bengals, and I think it's going to build on a great season, and great off season, and a great next season.
Absolutely, I agree. It looked like it was a lot of fun. You know what's crazy is, Eric, is Mon and I couldn't see or hear you, but it was pulling up on the show, which was nuts. We didn't see that till afterwards, and we were like, "Oh man, Eric, we could have gone live, but for some reason we couldn't pick you up." But you're right, man. It was, I think after I've had a little bit of time to reflect on everything, it 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 was a good season considering, we as Bengal fans, we've gotten spoiled now with this team. Thank goodness. It's a good problem to have. But I think what's so hard for me is watching all of these teams that are playing right now for the AFC. With a healthy Burrow, the Bengals walk to Las Vegas. I
They
mean,
do. They really do.
walk. Just gingerly walk to Las Vegas because with a healthy Burrow, this Bengals team is so much better than the other seven right now that are playing for the AFC. But that's football. It happens. Let's talk a little Bengal news right now, Eric. There has been a couple of things going on. Bengals roster moves. These are players that were signed to reserve future contracts. Defensive tackle Dominique Davis, cornerback and friend of the show Alan George, center Nate Gillum, defensive end Jeff Gunter, linebacker Shaka Hayward, wide receiver Cedric Jackson, one of Mon's favorite guys, guard Jackson Kirkland, who was on the practice squad injured list, wide receiver Kwame Lassiter, which we found out was a very good ping pong player in the locker room, wide receiver Kendrick Pryor as well. Those were guys all signed to reserved future contracts. And then also the Bengals re-signed Devin Conquerin, offensive tackle, to a one-year contract extension through 2024, a guy who missed quite a bit of this past season. Hooday, everybody. Thank you guys again for jumping in. Great to have everybody here tonight. Schedule-wise, Eric, we already know the Bengals' opponents. We just don't know the days and times. but we know home and away this upcoming season in 2024, the Bengals at home have the Ravens, the Browns, the Steelers, the Broncos, the Raiders, the Eagles, the Commanders, and the Patriots. And then the 2024 away opponents for our Bengals, the Ravens, the Browns, the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Giants, the Panthers, and once again, we are at the Titans. I don't know why we always have to go to the damn Titans.
Honestly, Jake, I think it's because everybody goes to that game and we haven't gone yet. So I think the Bengals Pulse needs to go to that game, and then we'll stop going there.
We do need to. We really
just
do.
make a road trip.
I've never been to Nashville. I've heard great things. I've always wanted to go, but have never had the chance. Let me just throw this at you real quick, and listeners, please comment in. Which one of those games are you most excited about on the schedule? Again, we don't know the days and the times and all that, but just opponent wise, who are you most excited about on that schedule, non-division?
It's hard to get excited for any of those. You don't know who these teams are. We start the preview shows going into the year, and you guys did a great prediction show this year, but we don't know who those teams are. We don't know who we're going to be when we face them. I mean, look, we thought the Texans game was going to be the easiest game of the year. You know, schedule your trips up to Cincinnati because that's a walkout victory. It wasn't. We thought that the Niners was going to be a blowout. You know, don't go to that game. You know, go and be a fan and a tourist. We won the game. You know, it's so hard to predict these things. With that being said, my brother is a big Panthers fan, and he's never been to a game. And some of those tickets this year for Panthers games were going for 25 cents. And I wish that was an overstatement. They were going for 25 cents.
That's crazy.
I think
probably like that next year too.
Well, it depends. So it depends when the game is. If the Panthers game is later in the year, we have to go to that game because that's halfway to Cincinnati. That's just a blink of an eye for my family. So I think we're going to go to that one. I think you guys should consider going to that one. So that one's exciting to me. You know, I get worked up for the division games. We got to go out and take care of business. It's a bad year for division play. I want to see us run the table next year. So it's really that I can't circle anything but those.
And I mean, at Chiefs with a healthy Joe Burrow, you already know that because T's going to get tagged. We know T's coming back. I'm telling you right now. But I don't know if you saw Jamar and T on ESPN today, but I can tell you what game they're circling, and that's at Chiefs, because when they were asked today who they have in the AFC, Jamar said anybody but the Chiefs.
Yeah.
That is a very real hatred from these Bengal players, which I absolutely love. Joe Burrow had a presser today yesterday. Joe Burrow came out and spoke to the media, something that we haven't seen here for the last 6 or 7 weeks. So Joe Burrow breaks the silence. We find out he's expecting to be ready for OTAs, which is exciting. Still about a month or two out from gripping and throwing a football. But something I think we knew that was happening is he's working his ass off to get back. You know, when Joe Burrow talks, it's just a different feel, right? And very interesting the things he had to say about T. Higgins, talking about the way his contract might have been set up. You know, I think those are things as Bengal fans that we've talked about, but hearing it come from Joe Burrow's mouth makes it a lot more surreal, I think, with Joe saying, you know, listen, I want T here. Everybody wants T here. We looked at contractually for me, how could we set this thing up to make sure T and Jamar are both Bengals? Again, I think T's going to get tagged, but don't be surprised if T. Higgins gets a 3 or 4 year contract. I swear to you, I will not be shocked if he did at all. And I don't know too, Eric, if you saw Joe Burrow on Instagram, but I'm a big Star Wars fan. My oldest son's name is Luke. I grew up on Star Wars. And I love Joe Burrow coming out and saying, sorry for missed time. It's the return of the Jedi. I mean, this
Yeah,
guy, he was made to be the Bengals starting quarterback. I
he was.
absolutely just love the dude. And I'm going to tell you right now, man, I'm going to tell you, and for you un-Star Wars nerds, obviously, Return of the Jedi is when Luke returns after getting his hand cut off and he gets that robotic hand. I don't know if he's going that deep into Star Wars lore, but I don't care. Just the fact that he tweeted out "Return of the Jedi" and just makes me love the guy even more.
Yeah, and so a couple of things on the whole him coming back, him being out. This isn't him tearing his ACL. This isn't some of his other off seasons. It's his hand. So he's really got a 3-month jump on everybody in lower body strength and conditioning. Joe Burrow, he's in the weight room. I mean, he's probably just leg day every day, leg and core. And what is the strength for quarterbacks? It's your legs, it's your core, it's that rotation. Yeah, he can't throw a football right now, but watch out NFL because this guy's going to come back very, very strong. And as long as his mechanics haven't lost anything, we could see a lot more deep balls from Joe because he is going to be strong. You play in high school and college and NFL, and the seasons are so long. It's not often that you get to take time off where you're injured, but you can actually work out. He's going to be in beast mode all off season, and I'm really excited for that. That's something. I mean, you're as a strength and conditioning coach, 3 months is a lot to put into it, especially when you have his type of nutrition. His personal chefs and his ability to tailor all that. The dude's going to put in the work. And the other thing, it was nice, like you said, it was nice to hear where they put that kind of cryptic information out there about discussing T and Jamar's contract during his negotiations, which makes you believe that Joe Burrow's contract was thrown out there with a lot of caveats that, okay, if we need to sign T, we have flexibility to convert some of your base salary to a bonus. We could see that happen right away.
Yeah, you could.
I'm excited for that. I think there's a whole segment we have out here maybe the next couple of weeks where we throw it out there. You're king for a day. You get whatever you want. I think this could be the year that we finally get a deal done with David Mulligetta, and T is the first one that breaks that mold, and then maybe that leads to more people re-signing with us. But we'll see.
And you heard Coach Taylor say he can't imagine this Bengal team without T. Higgins on it. T. Higgins is a priority for this football team. There is no doubt about that. Let's talk a little bit, too. We had some big news. Ted Karras, our guy, Ted, wins the fan vote for Man of the Year, which is incredible. That's a big deal, winning the fan vote. It's just awesome. Bengals Twitter is just so incredible. Helping get this thing happening for Ted and everything that he does for the city of Cincinnati is just incredible. But winning that fan vote is huge. It's gonna be interesting. I think he's got a real shot at this thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, winning the fan vote, more than 2.5 or 2.4 million votes for him in that charity challenge. That's really, really impressive. That's the most ever for the fan vote. I honestly, I don't know who's voting on this. Is this the writers that vote on it? Do you know who's out there doing that?
Yeah. I believe it's the writers. I think that's usually, what we get from them. Again, I don't know. I don't know how it's been from fan vote to winning the award, but I could imagine they're close. I would think. I wouldn't say hand to hand, but I would say they're probably pretty close. But yeah, it's the the NFL writers, and I think maybe does the past Man of the Years, do they have a vote too? I'm not sure. Listeners, if you know, please comment in the comment section, but I'm not real sure.
Yeah, and we live in our Cincinnati bubble. I don't know what a lot of the backstory is on the other candidates for this award. All I know is what Ted has done for the village of Marici is just fantastic. I know it started out as just a hat idea from a buddy to a buddy, but being able to link that with such a great organization, I think what I would love to see is for that type of organization to come to Cincinnati. I would love for that organization to come to our area in Orlando or
Oh,
over in the
that would
Space
be so
Coast.
awesome. That'd be so
I
awesome.
wasn't, I wasn't familiar with that type of organization and what they did, and that's an underserved community out there to the point of, we all have our bucket lists of what we do when we win that Powerball. That's now my bucket list item. I want a Village of Marici down here in Florida. I
Be
think there are
incredible.
so many people that would benefit from that. So when I hit that Powerball on Saturday night, I'm gonna be giving Ted a call and making that happen. But he's just such a good guy, and I hope it works out for him.
Well deserving. I hope he gets that. The All Pro first team came out. I don't put too much substance into this, to be honest. I think it's almost become a joke. Um, Obviously, Trey Hendrickson, a guy that we all as Bengal fans think should be first team All Pro, was not. Myles Garrett and Max Crosby, the two edge rushing All Pro first team guys. Again, it's a it's like anything nowadays. It's all about um, uh, you know I don't even know what to say. It's a popularity contest. It's just really it's just become such a joke. I will say congratulations to Jesse Bates. He was a first team All Pro. Again, it's kind of hard to watch that, right? It's kind of hard to stomach Jesse Bates getting that. But yeah, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett's a hell of a football player. I'm not going to take anything away from them, but if we put so much of our time, the NFL, into sacks and sack leaders and all that, how in God's name is Trey Hendrickson not a first team All Pro guy? He is the best, top two edge rushers in the NFL, and for him not to get that, it is what it is. But
Yeah, I mean, so there's only two for edge rushers. Is that how it works? There's
there's
just two
only
of them.
two. Yeah, only two.
And okay, Myles Garrett is obviously number one. He's not just the best edge rusher; he's a game changer. We saw games that he just took over and won by himself. But Crosby over Hendrickson, I don't see it. If it's T.J. Watt, you have an argument because he's the sack leader, right? But how many did Max Crosby have? So what are you saying was his defining characteristics for him to win over T.J. Watt or Trey Hendrickson? I don't know.
All I know is that Trey Hendrickson uh, was carried our defensive line when it came to rushing the passer. I mean, he doesn't have a guy on the other side of him, or even a guy inside of him that is helping him. He's getting double teamed on almost every single play. But yeah, I would say part of the issue is that Trey plays in Cincinnati, which is very unfortunate because, to me, he's a first team All Pro guy. I don't see anything else being the case there. But and I don't know how much Trey puts on that, but I will definitely stand on my soapbox and and argue that point because Max Crosby makes absolutely no sense. And yes, CC, TJ Watt didn't make it either. I mean, the two top sack leaders did not make first team All Pro, which is just absolutely crazy. But let's move on, Eric. So a lot of Bengal news in the coaching world, right? We have Mr. Callahan, who is really heating up right now in the coaching search. We saw the Seattle Seahawks moving on from their head football coach. That makes it what now? 7 or 8 openings, I think. 7 or 8 openings right now, which is, it's the numbers growing. There could be a couple more coming down the road. Brian Callahan, already on his second interview for one team. He is a name that is really heating up. Going to be interesting to see what happens with Brian Callahan, and if he does move on, who the next Bengal offensive coordinator will be. My vote is Dan Pitcher. I think it's an easy transition. It's Joe Burrow's guy. I know it's not a sexy pick, but the consistency for Joe Burrow is very important, I think. But going to be interesting to see what happens with Brian Callahan.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those things that you don't really get a full pulse on your coordinators. You know, they speak to the media, but especially with your head coach being really involved in the play calling, we don't know how that works. We don't know how much of the play calling is Zach. We don't know how much of the scheme is Brian. Really, we don't really know his personality and how he manages a team. I mean, Zach, when he got the head coaching job, he came from quarterbacks coach to head coach because he got his interview and impressed. So Callahan, you know, this is the second year of really getting interviews, and if he's of the same Zach Taylor mold and how he's going to manage players and do all that, it's not going to require, you know, a superstar offense for someone to say, man, this is a leader of men. We need him to run our football organization. And if he's learned anything from Zach, I mean, we give Zach a lot of gripe, you know, about his play calling and some of the cuteness and stuff that he does out there. But none of us has ever questioned how good of a coach he is. He is a leader of men. Those guys would go to war for him. And the only argument we've ever made was letting somebody else call plays. You go do what you do, which is motivate, inspire, and be a leader of men. And if that's rubbed off even 10% on Brian Callahan, I would expect that he's gone, if not this year, then next year.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting. We all thought Lou would be the one to go, but it ends up it's probably going to be Brian Callahan. And, you know, again, it's going to be interesting to see if Dan Pitcher slides into that position, or if they go out and maybe try to get a guy like Joe Brady, a guy that coached Joe Burrow in college. It's going to be very interesting to see how that all works out with the coaching search. Again, a lot of coaching jobs open right now. I would be shocked if Brian Callahan does not get a head coaching job.
What do you think about Mark's question? It is a great question because we all think Pitcher slides right in that role. We might get outbid for Pitcher if
I don't honestly, Mark. That's a great question. I don't see that happening. I think Joe Burrow is the deciding factor, and I think we see that Joe Burrow effect. I think Dan Pitcher stays to be Joe Burrow's offensive coordinator. I could be wrong. Again, you know, obviously Zach Taylor still has his hands in that offensive coordinator room, but I don't see Pitcher leaving Cincinnati for a lateral job. I don't see it, but you never know. You don't know how close he is with Brian Callahan, but I know for a fact that he is very close with Joe Burrow. Okay, let's move on here. Something, Eric, I've been thinking about ever since. I don't know if you guys saw Jeremy Roush came on from Fox. He came out and did a piece on Tyler Boyd, and it was a piece that did not get very good feedback from the Cincinnati community, which I'll be honest, I agree with, in the fact of saying, you know, do we have to really decipher if Tyler Boyd's a Bengals great or a great Bengal? I kind of thought that was a little inappropriate, but I started thinking about what is the difference between a Bengals great and a great Bengal. And I want you guys out there, the listeners, I want to hear from you, because I think my personal opinion is, as Bengal fans, and now we have the Ring of Honor, I think it's very important that we are able to determine the difference between the two. And I think there is a difference between a Bengals great or a great Bengal. And again, this has nothing to do with Tyler Boyd. I just think as a whole, we as Bengal fans need to start deciphering between the two, because again, that Ring of Honor is going to start. It's going to start tightening up, and you know, I think we as Bengal fans, instead of just throwing names out there using the word Bengals great, I think it's important that we're able to do that. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about here in this next segment. Is what is the difference between a Bengals great or a great Bengal? Again, guys, please comment in the comment section. I'm gonna say as many of them as I can. I would love to hear from you guys. Eric, let me hear from you first. What would you say is the difference if you had to say this guy is a Bengals great or a great Bengal? What is the difference to you? What do you think?
Yeah, I had to think about this for a little bit earlier, but really, to me, this is basically an all-time great player that happened to play for the Bengals would be my definition of a Bengals great. Uh, a, and then definition of a great Bengal is those guys that you never want to leave your team. I want them to retire as a Bengal. I want them to only wear the Bengals jersey. They connect with the city. They connect with the fans. They embody what it means to be a stand-up guy and just live and breathe Cincinnati. My biggest kind of example out there who's kind of riding the lines right now, but Bengals great, Corey Dillon should be in the Hall of Fame. One of the greatest running back that's played for us to date. Did not leave Cincinnati on great terms. Still a Bengals great. Bengals, best running back to play for the Bengals. He could have never come back to Cincinnati, and he would have been an all-time great Bengal. He has now kind of heard the argument, and maybe the Ring of Honor has impacted that in order to get into the Ring of Honor, sometimes you got to be a great Bengal as well. So he's come back to the city. He's reconnecting with the fans. He's now becoming both a Bengals great and a great Bengal because he's becoming part of the community. And I think that's going to get him into the Ring of Honor next year. That would be my biggest example of a Bengals great. This conversation starts with Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is my definition of a great Bengal. I do not want him to go to any other team. That man has earned the right to play out his career in Cincinnati, and it is going to be a sad day for me when he gets a lot of money thrown at him to go play. Hopefully not for his hometown team, but it could be that case.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say I agree. I think again, I think we as Bengal fans, I think we take a lot of that stuff personally because, again, like I said, I'm not agreeing with the way Jeremy did the story. However, I think we have to start looking big picture here now that this organization is starting to decipher the difference between a great Bengal and a Bengal great. To me, when I think about Bengal great receivers, let's just talk about receivers first because we're talking about Tyler Boyd. I only have four. I have four Bengal great receivers. These are guys that deserve to be in the Ring of Honor. Two of them are already in the Ring of Honor. That's Chad Johnson and Isaac Curtis. Those two are Bengal greats. They are Bengal absolute greats, really borderline Hall of Famers. My other two, AJ Green is a Bengal great. To me, he is the epitome of a Bengal great player. And the other one is Carl Pickens. Carl Pickens, to me, is a Bengals great. After that, there's been a lot of great Bengals, and Tyler Boyd's one of them. When you start looking at that receiving, the past of that receiving room, I'll throw out some numbers for you real quick. Chad Johnson, all-time leading receiver, obviously. I don't think there's any argument there what Chad has done for this organization. AJ Green at number 2, Isaac Curtis at number 3, Carl Pickens at number 4. Those are the top 4 Bengal receivers. After that, Chris Collinsworth, Eddie Brown, who I'm a huge Eddie Brown fan, have been my entire Bengal fandom. I loved him in the 80s. I used to run around to everybody. I was Eddie Brown. And then you have Tyler Boyd and Darnay Scott, TJ Husmanzad. These are all great Bengals. Tyler Boyd is a great Bengal. I love Tyler Boyd. Is he a Bengal great? I think there's a difference there. And again, like I said, I'm looking at all you guys here. I love this. Mark says Collinsworth, Green, Ocho, and Pickens, all Bengals greats. Again, the Collinsworth thing, I get it. I just don't know if I would say he's a Bengals great. He was definitely a great Bengal. I just don't know if I would say a Bengals great. I think one of the things that we have to look at is too that the time frame of those guys played, when they played, and how much they did for this team at their position, right? Chad Johnson carried the team. AJ Green carried the team. Isaac Curtis helped carry that offense. Carl Pickens, if anybody watched in the 90s, Carl Pickens carried that offense. Those guys carried their team in that time. I agree. I love Darnay Scott, guys. I love Darnay Scott, but he's a great Bengal. I just don't see him being a Bengal great. I love all the comments. You guys are killing it. I think too. Let's talk about Power Radio. Wants to jump into quarterbacks. Let's talk about quarterbacks, because again, when we think of Bengal greats at quarterback, it's a very interesting room, right? I think we can all agree that Ken Anderson and Boomer Esiason are Bengal greats. Those two guys, they're in the Ring of Honor. They deserve to be in the Ring of Honor. After that, it gets a little dicey, right? I mean, listen. After that, you got Andy Dalton, and I know he's not a huge fan base, but when you look at Andy Dalton's numbers, and don't forget, he took the Bengals to 5 straight playoffs. Andy Dalton is teetering on that. I think he's an interesting one. I really do. New Stripe. Ace probably does not agree with me. But I think Andy Dalton's a guy you have to talk about. I do. Ace, I think I'm not saying he's a Bengals great, but he's a second all-time leading passer for the Cincinnati Bengals. Then you got Carson Palmer. You got Jeff Blake. Those guys to me are I think those guys. Ace is killing me. I think those guys are great Bengals. I do. I love Jeff Blake. I'm a huge Jeff Blake fan. He was one of the shining lights in a very dim decade of Bengal football. Carson Palmer obviously left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. Greg Cook is another one, Mark. That's a great one. Greg Cook. I have a hard time. I'll say this. I have a hard time putting Andy there, and I'm not going to put Andy there. I'm just playing devil's advocate here because, you just can't – you really just can't start throwing things around. Stats probably fall in there. What they did for the organization probably falls in there. There's different things that probably fall into that realm, right?
So this is a really good point of the question, and maybe we should put this out on Twitter later after the show, because it's a question we could probably debate for years and years to come. Andy Dalton's biggest thing is going to be time. Right now, Andy Dalton doesn't get into the Ring of Honor because it's all so fresh. We haven't gotten that championship yet. Yeah. He didn't get us over the hump. Right. There was that he didn't have that killer instinct, and that still stings for a lot of us. It's going to take Burrow getting us that Super Bowl championship for that sting to go away. But what him, AJ Green, Marvin did for this organization, it cannot be quantified. They turned us, we just lost Carson Palmer. It was packed in for years. And, second round pick, Andy Dalton comes in with AJ Green. And next thing you know, we're in the playoffs year after year after year. They brought winning football back to Cincinnati. It might not have been gone that long since Palmer was there, but I don't feel like the Palmer era really ever got established. So the Marvin Lewis and the Andy Dalton era established us as winners, just not postseason winners. And I think that he's going to go down as a great Bengal eventually, but we're probably going to take 10 years post him leaving Cincinnati to really get that out there. There was a comment here earlier on, and we need to get to him. Joe Mixon is probably where the conversation goes. There's so much talk about Joe Mixon not being here next year.
Yeah, let's talk about running back because that is interesting. I just want to leave you with this real quick. I just want to leave you with this, okay? And I grew up a Boomer Esiason. He was my childhood hero.
Mine too.
Boomer Esiason,
all over
my childhood hero. But let me just say this: Boomer Esiason played one more game than Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton had 5,000 more yards passing. Now, again, they ran the ball a lot with Boomer. Obviously, he had a lot of great running backs that played with him. Andy Dalton had 17 more touchdown passes, and he had 13 less interceptions. Again, I'm not saying Andy Dalton is a Bengals great. Please don't twist it. But
somebody clip it up.
I'm just saying. All right, let's talk about running back here because a lot of people are throwing, Takeo is a good one. Man, Takeo spikes. Okay, let's do running back first. Okay. So running back here is an interesting one, right? You already talked about Corey Dillon. I'm going to agree. I think Corey Dillon is a Bengals great. James Brooks, I think he is a Bengals great. And some people might argue that. Listen, I grew up in that time frame, and I remember James Brooks and what he did for this Bengals team. And I just think he's a Bengals great. I do. I think he's a Bengals great. I think he belongs in the Ring of Honor. And then you have Joe Mixon. And Joe Mixon is a very interesting one. He really is a very interesting one because he is second all time now in rushing touchdowns. He is third by only 35 yards, being the second leading rusher all time for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm gonna say this, and I'm probably gonna get flack for it. I think that Joe Mixon is a Bengals great, and I'm probably gonna get flack for that. But I want to hear your argument on why he wouldn't be, because I think that's a difficult argument to have. I know a lot of people are going to say he's a great Bengal. But Joe Mixon, I think he's a Bengals great.
I don't disagree. I just think he's on the edge of Bengals great or great Bengal. And the biggest thing that hurts Joe Mixon is Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow came onto this team at a point where Joe Mixon was carrying us. And when Joe Burrow was drafted, we now switched to Joe Burrow's offense, which is pass heavy. And now 4 of Mixon's prime years are spent in a pass heavy offense. And I think that's what's, nobody will debate that he's a great Bengal. He's always out there throwing the football with our kids before the games. We see a lot of the stuff that he does for charity, a lot of the stuff that he does that nobody knows about, but you hear about the stories. He's not out there publicizing it. Man is a great Bengal through and through. There was so many questions when he first came in this league. He is just a good dude for this city. He's a great Bengal. But the Joe Burrow coming in, it is taken us from a power run game to a finesse pass game, and that's what's affected his stats. So I think it's still out there. The argument's still out there.
I think that's what we have to look at is, again, I think we have to look at some of that stuff. I think we have to know, the time frame and when they played and what they were able to accomplish. And I think that's the difference. I think what Joe Mixon has been able to accomplish is Samaje Perine is very impressive behind what you would say is a terrible offensive line the last couple of years. What Joe Mixon has been able to do I think it would be very hard not to have him as a Bengal. I think he's a top 3 Bengals running back of all time. I think a guy that is a perfect example of a Bengals great or a great Bengal is Ickey Woods, right?
Yeah.
Again, a time that I grew up in, it was Ickey and James, and those were the dudes. I loved Ickey Woods. He's one of my favorite Bengals of all time. Ickey Shuffle and Super Bowl, and there was so much great stuff going on. And I was a young Bengal fan at the time, just loving Ickey Woods. But Ickey Woods is not a Bengals great. He's not. He's a great Bengal. One of my favorite Bengals of all time. But again, I think that's where we as fans have to be able to decipher between the two. Ace asked about Jamar Chase. Is Jamar Chase already a Bengals great? Joe Burrow, is he already a Bengals great? I think there's argument there as well. I think where it gets really easy is the offensive line, right? You have Anthony Munoz. He's a Bengals great. I would say Andrew Whitworth is in there as far as a Bengals great. I think
Willie Anderson.
I think Willie Anderson, obviously. I mean, those 3 guys are pretty much locks. I'm also going to say Max Montoya is a Bengals great. Yep. He is a Bengals great. Dave Lapham, that's an interesting one, Mark. Dave Lapham, would you consider him a Bengal great? Richie Bram, that's a great one. Again, I think the argument is it's an interesting one, right? Because how do we decipher between the difference of the two? I think offensive line. You look at those guys. You look at Willie Anderson, who's going to be in the Hall of Fame this year. Should be. Andrew Whitworth is going to be in the Hall of Fame, hopefully as a Bengal. Anthony Munoz, obviously already in the Hall of Fame. Those are Bengal greats. Max Montoya, again, a guy that if you didn't grow up watching Max Montoya, I'm telling you guys, he is a Bengals great. He was when Max Montoya left this team went into the tank very quickly. Him and Anthony carried that offensive line. But again, I think this is a very interesting argument to have because, again, I don't agree with Jeremy basically deciphering the 2 on national television about Tyler Boyd, but I think it's a good discussion to have. Defensively, let's talk about defense real quick. Who would you say are some Bengal greats? I mean, obviously Ken Riley, he's a Bengal great, right? I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame. He's a Bengal great. There's no denying Ken Riley. Who else would you say is a Bengals great on defense?
Yeah, I mean that's where a lot of your stuff is going to go back and forth. I mean, we've had just so many players, but how many lights out defensive players have we had? It's hard to have those people jump off the top of your head. I mean, Takeo Spikes, I think, was a great Bengal. We just didn't have him long enough. We had Leon Hall and Jonathan Joseph back there were stables, but we didn't have them long enough. James Francis, all guys that just didn't stick around to really be all-time great Bengals. And in a time where there weren't a lot of great Bengals, the relationship with a lot of the fans wasn't what it is now. We did live in a time where we didn't have social media, we didn't have Twitter, and so we didn't have these interactions, but there wasn't a great relationship with the city and ownership. So you had a lot of great players, but you didn't have a lot of great Bengals at the time. So
I'm going to throw out some names. I'm going to throw out some names of guys that I think defensively would be Bengals greats. Okay. And you guys tell me if you agree or not. Well, there's one of them right there. Yeah. Lamar Parrish is a Bengals great. There's another one. Geno Atkins is a Bengals great. Tim Krumrie is a Bengals great.
So he was in the line again with us at the game. Just a fun fact. Tim Krumrie is behind us in line to get into the Bengals game. could walk up to the stadium and say, "Do you know who I am?" Nope, standing back there with his cowboy hat. What a great dude. Sorry, go
Carlos
ahead.
Dunlap. Carlos Dunlap's an interesting one. Ace threw that out there. I, I'm gonna say he is a Bengals great. Isn't that crazy? I didn't. You know, I think it's hard not to say that Carlos Dunlap is a Bengals great. I mean, he is, right? I mean, he is definitely a Bengals great. I don't think there's any doubt about that. David Fulcher, I think, is a Bengals great. Reggie Williams, I think, is a Bengals great. I think those guys defensively really carried this organization during that time frame of when they played.
What
Takeo
about
Spikes
Pac-Man?
is it? What'd you say?
Pac-Man. Where would you put him? Pac-Man Jones.
I think he's a great Bengal. I wouldn't put him as a Bengal great. I would say Pac-Man is a great Bengal. That's a really good. Oh, those are some good ones, Mark. Uh, Man, Coy Bacon. That's an interesting one. Uh, Another interesting one, yes, is Vontez Burfict. Uh, oh man, that's a tough one. What do you think about Vontez Burfict? You think he's a
I,
Bengals great?
I this frustrates me to this day, and Mon will say it over and over and over again. If the dude is drafted to the Pittsburgh Steelers, he is still playing, and he will go down in the lores of football as one of those tough players that just hits hard and plays tough, hard-nosed football, and probably goes to the Hall of Fame because he was drafted or because he was signed by the Cincinnati Bengals and given a chance. He goes down as a dirty player because you're only allowed to be a dirty player if you play in Pittsburgh. And I think he's a Bengals great. I don't know that he's a great Bengal. I think that the potential was just through the roof there. But because he played dirty at times and he didn't play in Pittsburgh, we just will never know because his career was shorter than it should have been.
I agree. I agree. Let's talk about this one because I think there's a couple of interesting ones you could really say. Yeah, I agree. Dhani Jones definitely a great Bengal. I think he would. I think you could put him in that great Bengal category. But here's the all-time sack leaders: Tim Krumrie at 10. But again, you guys, Tim Krumrie was led the team in tackles playing nose tackle. He was. Don't go by sacks alone with him. He was an incredible Bengal great. Michael Johnson, Justin Smith, Ross Browner. That's another one. Ross Browner could be a Bengals great. Obviously, Reggie Williams, Geno Atkins, Carlos Dunlap. And I can't even believe we didn't say Eddie Edwards. I mean, those guys to me are they're Bengal greats, right? I mean, those guys belong in the ring of honor. Larry Ogunjobi. Those guys belong in the ring of honor. I'm going to go back with what you said about Burfict. You are 100% right. If Vontez Burfict plays for any other team the way he played for us, he is going to go down as one of the best defensive players in that era to play in the league, right? If he does not play for the Bengals, he is one of the best of all time in that league.
Yeah, it's such a shame because that just shows the hypocrisy of how people are out there. If he was there, he's a hard nosed, tough player. They're allowed to do it, and we're not, and that's just frustrating.
Yeah, I agree. We eventually we're going to have this conversation on here of being. Oh yeah, Jim LeClaire. That's another good one, guys. Those are great ones. Eventually we're going to have to go on here and we're going to have the conversation. We have to have Ace and Zim on because Mon and I and Ace and Zim, we go back and forth on what is the best team, 2005, 2015. That will be a show for another day. We'll have to do that in the off season.
I think we definitely need to schedule that. And I think this topic is too much for one show, and I don't think we realized it. So it's a good idea, Jake, to bring this up. But I think we have a lot of we could probably talk this for another 2 hours.
I know, right? We probably could. Sam Hubbard, a great Bengal, without a doubt, a great Bengal. We're definitely. Oh, Brian Simmons, that's another good one. We're definitely going to have to talk about this again, because I do think, to wrap this up, I do think, we as Bengal fans, we're all going to have our different opinions on players, especially. I think too, a big part of it is when you really start to dive into this team and become a big Bengals fan. You look at those guys in that time frame, and you kind of just automatically say those guys are Bengals greats, when you don't really look back and you look at the history of this team and have that understanding. I do it all the time. I've been a Bengal fan for over 40 years, and I still a name will pop up like it did tonight, and I'm like, oh man, I forgot about so and so. That is a Bengals great. But we're definitely going to have to revisit this. Thank you guys so much for throwing names out tonight. Those are just some great comments. And we're definitely going to have to do that 2005 versus 2015. I am a 2005 guy. I think that is the second best Bengal team of all time. But we'll have that conversation another night. Eric, thanks for coming on tonight. We really appreciate it. It was fun. I enjoyed it. Like I said, we're going to have to revisit this in the off season, because bring a tab, Perry.
So, Jake, let's schedule that show, because I'll be honest, I love both of those teams, and I don't have opinion of which one is better. So let's run that show, and you guys can convince me which side I need to be on. I think they were both. I mean,
there's no convincing. Well, 2005. 2005's team. Don't even get me started.
Who's debating this? It's you and Mon, Ace and Sim?
Yes. Yeah. It's Ace and I. Ace and I are 2005. I believe Ace is 2005 with me, and Zim and Mon are 2015.
Yeah. So maybe we need a panel of 3 to vote on it. I don't know that I probably lean 2005, but with some good debaters in this group. So I think we should set this roundtable up, and maybe we do that in February.
We will. We definitely will. For all you guys, for all you listeners out there too, we are going to be either Monday or Wednesday night. I think right now we're planning on being Monday night in the off season. We will make sure we let you guys know, but we will be live either Monday or Wednesday. We're going one night a week in the off season. Right now it's going to look like it's going to be Monday, but we will let you guys know. Again, thank you guys so much for jumping in. Eric, before we get out of here, who do you not want to see win in Wild Card Weekend? We're not going to pick teams, but who do you not want to see to win in Wild Card Weekend?
Well, unfortunately, it's hard, because there's a lot of them that I don't want to win. Unfortunately, the Ravens don't play, so that's easy. We don't have to root against them, but we don't want the Chiefs to win. We don't want the Browns to win. We don't want the Steelers to win. What choice? There's not a lot of choices there.
There's not a lot of choices.
I am not going to jump out there and say that I'm bandwagon rooting for this team. I will say that I've always rooted for the Lions, because my brother's a huge Lions fan. He's a season ticket holder. I will be cheering on for the Lions, but it's just not the same when the Bengals aren't in it. So it is what it is. Let's just get to the off season. Before we do, and we're getting out of here right now, I forgot, and I wanted to shout out to one of our super fans that just happened to run into me at the stadium, Eric Lopez. I've actually ran into him a couple times out there. So shout out to Eric, Bengals super fan that travels to the games. brought up a good point. We need some Bengals Pulse merch, so we're going to get working on that, Eric, and try and get that out there for people if they want it. But shout out to him and everybody else that I saw in the stadium this weekend. So.
Yeah, Eric's a good dude. Again, guys, thank you so much for jumping in. I'm gonna throw this out real quick. My dark horse for the AFC, the Houston Texans. I'm telling you right now,
that would be great.
I'm telling you right now, watch this team. They're young. They are just running out there, playing football, having fun. They with a carefree attitude. Those are the dangerous teams, Eric. I'm telling you. The Houston Texans, if they get by the Cleveland Browns this weekend, watch out. I think they can go into Baltimore and beat the Ravens. Going to be interesting to see. We're definitely going to schedule 2005, 2015. We'll get Ace and Zim on here. That show is going to be awesome. All right, guys, if you like this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you check us out on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. If you like this podcast, make sure you give us that 5-star review. We'd very much appreciate that. As always, follow Mon on Twitter at The Firemon. Follow me on Twitter at Coach Jake Owens 9. Follow Eric on Twitter at eFlash with 2 H's 88. Follow the Wincinnati Podcast Network on Twitter at Wincinnati Pod. And as always, follow the Bengals Pulse on Twitter at Bengals_Pulse9. The same on Instagram without the at Bengals_Pulse9. And as always, check out all the awesome podcasts right here on the Wincinnati Podcast Network. He is Eric. I am Jake. Mon, we love you, brother. We'll see you soon. Be safe out there. This is the Bengals Pulse. Hoo day, Bengal fans. We will see you next week.